I am here with my friend Adam from Plugged In. Hello, Adam.
How are you doing, Andy?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing all right. We call this the week in review. That's what I've sort of come up with it
Yes.
because we get to review all sorts of different things. So, what have you got for us to start us this week?
Well, I have a number of things to talk about, and I like to sort of give you an overview of the different things happening at Plugged In. And on our blog this week, we wrote about the nominees for the U.S. Academy Awards. I'm guessing the British equivalent is what the BAFTAs, the
Well, yeah, I guess so.
British
Yeah.
Arts and Sciences. I'm not sure what it stands for, but um, it's interesting when you look at this list of movies. We have a bunch of movies. Half of them are rated R. Anora, The Brutalist, Complete Unknown, Emilia Perez, and The Substance. And then we've got a couple that are rated PG, Conclave and Wicked. And I think this is sort of a terrific example of, well, you would think those might be better, but they both have some issues. Wicked obviously is based on the Broadway play, which is itself based on a book, and I'm going to talk about that in a moment. But got a fair bit of magic, and I think a lot of people have enjoyed the Broadway musical over the years, and this is a pretty faithful adaptation to the big screen, as I understand it. But we certainly heard from a lot of people who said, man, how could we ever say anything positive about something that has magic sort of right at the core of it? And I think that's a legitimate question. Different Christians are going to feel differently about that. But we decided with that in mind that we wanted to go back and review the actual book. We review books as well. And so back in 1995, Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West came out. And it's sort of a backstory fleshing out the origin story of Elphaba, who is the Wicked Witch of the West. And I'll spare you all of the details. But what really stood out to us with this book was there's a ton of content that's not in the Broadway musical or the movie. There's a lot of sexual content. There's a lot of language. There is a lot of criticism of faith and religion in general that I'm not even sure completely comes through in the movie or Broadway version. And so we like to let people know things like that, because if you did like the movie or the musical, you might think, oh, I want to go read the book that this is based on. And you're going to get a couple pages in and think, holy cow, this is way worse than either one of those, even though those other ones had some problems too. So that is Wicked, The Life and Times of the Wicked Witch of the West, which turns out is very difficult to say.
I do remember here in the UK, one of our, I suppose, most prolific DJs, Terry Wogan, who's now passed away, but he introduced the world essentially to Dido, and it was on the back of a track with Eminem. And of course, the bit that we heard, the song was very much for all audiences, really. But I do remember him very clearly because he was a much more older gentleman, shall we say. And he said, just be aware, if you go off and listen to the Eminem album, it's nothing like what you've just heard from this track with Dido. So, Dido, great. You'll probably enjoy it. Eminem, just be aware of some of the pretty severe language. So, yeah, it was one of those things of this isn't what you necessarily think it's going to be like.
Yep. So it's amazing that, there's so much stuff out there that it's hard for one person to keep track of it all. And obviously we've got 6 people on our team who are looking at this stuff week in and week out, but we would rather have you avoid those unpleasant surprises. So that's one of the things that we want to do at Plugged In. And another one, moving in a little bit different direction, is we want to help those who come to our site and engage with our ministry. And we're a part of Focus on the Family in Colorado Springs, the United States. To really grow in thinking about entertainment as a worldview and discipleship realm, if you will, as it comes to entertainment, and not just, well, this has this and this, we should avoid it. That's important potentially, but to think more deeply about it. And we have a podcast called The Plugged In Show. And this week on The Plugged In Show, we actually had a terrific conversation about how Hollywood influences our perspective on sexuality. and we deal with sexual elements in a ton of the stuff that we review, and really talking through how do we help our kids navigate that realm. I think, Andy, when you and I were growing up back in the Stone Age, riding dinosaurs to work and such, um, if we were lucky, maybe our parents had the talk with us once, right? And they checked that box and we moved on. But our culture is just completely awash in sexuality. And so it becomes a conversation that, even though it's not super comfortable, we feel like it's one that it's important to have, because the entertainment industry is having it continually. So on the Plugged In Show this week, and you can find that at thepluggedinshow.com. I thought we had a really robust conversation about this important subject, and I think it's one that, if we've done an episode recently that I would commend to your listeners' attention, that would be the one.
Cool. It is worth having these conversations. It might be awkward, but if we don't have those conversations with our children, I can promise you, as I'm sure you would agree, they're having that conversation elsewhere.
Oh,
So
they are.
if you want to have some influence over your children, don't do nothing,
Yep.
do something.
And I think that the other thing is, my kids are 14, 16, and 18. And I don't know, maybe because my mom was unusual and that we did talk about this stuff. Once you get past that sort of initial awkwardness and it becomes something you've talked about more than once, I think it sort of moves it out of that weird territory. And it's just becomes, okay, this is something that we're going to talk about. And my daughters will sometimes tell me, yeah, so and so at school is, got a reputation for being sexually active. And we'll just talk about that. And we'll talk about the consequences of it. And we'll talk about why this is important. And I love that they feel free to bring it up themselves, that it's not just me sort of being a pesky parent and trying to pry into their teen lives, but they understand that it's important and they're willing to talk with me about it. And I think that's really the fruit of that back and forth conversation over time.
Very much so. What else have we got then?
Well, there's an interesting movie that is streaming on Max. Do you guys have Max in England? I'm assuming you do.
I assume so. I don't know,
Okay.
to be
So
honest.
this was a movie that had a very brief theatrical release in December. It's directed by Clint Eastwood. It's called Juror Number Two, and it is an ethical case study, because there is a juror on a jury who is sitting on a murder trial case. And at the heart of the case is the allegation that this man, his ex-girlfriend, has ended up dead, and he's accused of murder. They had an altercation, and there was some drinking involved the night that she died, and is found by a bridge completely battered. And so it seems like an open and shut case. He has a very checkered past. Everybody thinks they're going to be in and out quickly, but juror number two realizes very quickly that the night she died, he was also driving home along that same road and came across this bridge, and it was raining very hard and he couldn't see, and he hit something. And in the moment, he thought it was a deer. But in retrospect, he thought, what if I hit this woman and I didn't realize it? And so, there's two issues at stake. Is he going to take responsibility?
Wow.
And is he going to cast doubt on whether, this guy probably isn't guilty, but he doesn't actually know for sure. It could have been a deer. It could have been this woman. And I love that these sorts of movies that force us to sort of, climb into, well, what would you do? Would you have the courage to take responsibility for something? Or would you be quiet? Would you just let it pass and let this guy who might be innocent end up getting convicted of murder? So interesting movie. It's got some language, a little bit of violence, but as PG-13 movies go, not a crazy amount of content. It's not the kind of movie that kids are going to want to watch. But if you have friends or a spouse that you really like diving into movies that make you think, this is one you might actually consider.
Remind me of the name, because that one's got me. I like any kind of court stuff. I quite enjoy watching those. What's that one called?
It is called Juror Number Two.
Juror number 2, and that's Clint Eastwood. No, yes.
And it's a Clint Eastwood directed movie.
Wow.
He's not in the movie. Yeah.
No, that's fine. Okay, I think we've got time for one more.
And did we talk about I'm Still Here last week? Does that ring a bell?
Without checking my notes from last week, I can't remember.
Okay.
Let's say no. Let's carry on, and it'll be fine, and no one will notice.
I do so many interviews that this was one that came in late last week. So I'm Still Here is one of the other Oscar Best Picture nominees here in the United States this year. And this is a story of a family that went through an unspeakable tragedy. It's a story, true story from Brazil. And in the mid 1960s, there was a military coup in Brazil. The military took over and they sort of began to go after everybody who was a dissident and outspoken critic, protesters, anybody left leaning, they went after. And there is a man named Rubens who was in the government. He was forced out of the government. And this has been 6 or 7 years now. And they show up at his door one day and say, well, we need to take you in and we need you to give a deposition. And his wife is terrified. They have 5 children. And he's like, it's okay. It's okay. I'll be back soon. Well, he never comes home. They take him and he's gone. And, obviously after a certain amount of time, everybody realizes the government has taken him and he's, he's never coming back because they killed him. Yeah. And it's really her quest to figure out what happened. Her name is Eunice, and her equally important quest to try to keep her family together. And so this is a really engaging film, and not an easy movie to watch, but I think another one that if you see it pop up, you might have no idea what it actually is. It's got a little bit of visually sensual content, not a ton, but definitely, as always, if anything I talk about sounds interesting, check out our full review at pluggedin.com, but and some language, but it's in Portuguese, so you're not actually going to hear it because it's all subtitled.
Fine.
So that's I'm Still Here.
I'm Still Here. One to read, basically.
Yes. Yes.
Nothing
a movie to watch it and also to read. Yes.
You see, we can all multitask. Absolutely.
That's right. That's right.
Adam, thank you. I so look forward to these. It's so important, I think, that we can produce good media, but at the same time, we need to let people know what's going on in the media, because if we don't share what's going on, then, like you keep on saying, we're going to have those surprises and thinking, I was okay with that bit, but I really wish I knew about that part, because you know what? Exactly. I'm not okay with that. And actually, we're all different. We've all got our levels of what we're okay with and not, and that's why Plugged In is brilliant. Do you want to give us a website so people can get all the reviews and more?
You can find us at pluggedin.com, and our podcast is thepluggedinshow.com, and we are a ministry of focus on the family.
Adam, thank you. God bless. Take care.
You bet. Thanks, Andy.